One and only 60 Cat here. I'm showing you what's new in my game called Pizza Boss. It's a game where you run a pizzeria. I'm also gonna be talking about some behind the scenes information about the design and mechanics and art that go behind this game. So, first off, what's new from last time? Well, I've done a bunch of little aesthetic changes, stuff like this cold refrigerator. Ooh. The oven has been more fleshed out. You can add wood and it shows the wood burning inside. It has a little bit of animation. This also smokes as fast as you have firewood in there. As there's more firewood, there's more smoke. And a little bit of environmental graphics. And a butterfly. He flies. And I kind of actually made, technically right now, it's a true game, because there's an objective, there's an end to it. It's officially a game, so of course it's not what I've intended yet, but we will get there. I'm very determined to finish this game. And so, I guess I'm going to restart it, and I'll try to get my best score that I can. So I also added some well, there's like max quantities and stockpiles now, so you can't, before you could basically put 2,000 tomatoes. Now you can only hold 3 of one item in any stockpile. And then now you get money when you finish the pizza as far as you can go. Which right now you can only just make a pizza base, which they grab the ticket. So these are the tickets that shows which kind of pizza and what table number it goes to. So normally in the finished game, the server would go down here and take the table and bring the ticket back, and that's how you'd be able to actually go further on the pizza past the pizza base. Pizza bases are supposed to be right here. Oh god, he's idle. I'm wasting time. It's all about efficiency. You only got 7 minutes to get as much cash as possible. So now you can actually press 1, 2, and 3 to select your coworkers. So you can give them orders from afar. And a lot of this kind of interface stuff is kind of inspired from my playing of StarCraft. StarCraft has some incredible interface. It's very intuitive. You can move things very quickly. So kind of how you can just click something and then give it an order. That's very StarCraft, Warcraft-esque. He's put on assembly. Oh, and he's full here. Oh, jeez, get some more wheat, get some more crusts. So it's fun to actually see the mechanics of the game come together, because it took a hot minute to get that far. I couldn't see that it was a real game yet and see how that plays. And basically the main design idea of this game is the multitasking. Is balancing multitasking. And a lot of games do that with only one person doing the tasks, where you're trying to juggle a lot of tasks at the same time as one person. But different games like real-time strategy games or simulator games do it in a way where you control multiple places, or you have more of an overview of the map. And so this is kind of has ideas from lots of different games, like these little DNA pieces all put together. A lot of pieces from my old games. There's a lot of Aegeon of my game called Aegeon, which is basically like a whole universe. I've made a few prototypes within that universe because it's such a great just base to make a bunch of games. Because Aegeon has its own rules, its own like physics. For example, everything is made of ether, and there's only 7 different ethers, and those are all 7 different colors. And then oh god, we need cheese. Oh jeez, come on, Stephanie. Make it that cheese. So yeah, in Aegeon, there's a lot of different games you can make from that universe, but one of them is kind of like a simulator like game where you watch societies thrive. They mine their own resources. And so I even have an iteration of that game, which I'll actually go into it after this round is over. So learning about that and actually playing some games recently, some of the best new indie games that exist that aren't necessarily even that popular, but they are incredible. Games like RimWorld. There's Soviet Republic, which is absolutely insane. Soviet Republic, you simulate your own kind of like a whole society. So it did a lot of things that I wanted to do with Aegeon, but I got to see somebody else iterating on that. And I got to learn a lot about what I would want to do for my own design based on that. And one big thing I learned from Soviet Republic is that even though they do a great job, they do so many good things, I can't even complain about the design. I'm just saying if I would do my own version, you can actually go too detailed with a simulator game. Go figure. Because you're trying to simulate things. So basically I've learned to distill the best parts about simulating something, taking out what's monotonous and not so fun, and just trying to take out what's fun about it and what's characteristic about it. So those ideas I've implemented in this game very strongly. And that goes with ideas of ease of use for the player. You don't want to like punish a player. So I don't know if I've talked about the full design of this game in my last video, but in general, I'm probably about a good past halfway of what the full content that there will be. So this is a good interface of showing these are all the different jobs you can do, and they're kind of arranged by where they are in the map. Like the firewood's kind of top left, mushrooms are over here. So you usually need to source. These are like sources, and these are like processing. And then so we'll have bake. It's not ready yet, but that would be the next step. Or actually, toppings would be the next step. So they would bring pizzas here, either get some pepperoni or mushrooms or olives, and complete the pizza, and then start baking it. And so later we'll have customers that come in. They have their own little traits. They come in and they sit down over here. You have to assign somebody to get their order. Give them drinks would be a separate category. There's going to be like a little bit of arcade so guests can entertain themselves when they're not entertained by the entertainment stage. You also have that entertainment stage, which you can assign workers to. And right now you only have 3 workers, though. There'll definitely be more. And the game is also going to go by days. It's kind of like a campaign, or like the story mode is going to be these 7 days where it's still the same game, but it adds a new mechanic every day. So, and I think you'd also add more employees. And so what's about to play is the music I just made recently for this game, which I'm really happy about. It's kind of like a fanfare for completing right now. So, actually might as well want to show this version of Aegeon that I've been making, but let's see here. Actually, okay, I'm going to show you the Illustrator file. So I produce a lot of the content in Illustrator, and in this one file specifically. It's actually it's kind of slow to save, so I've tried to export some of the items, but I can pretty much make most of the assets in one page. So a lot of these layers are hidden, so I'll make them visible. Basically, this is a nice place for me to prototype everything. Right now, the background is just like a really big image, but it won't be in the future. I piece by piece take them out. Like recently, I redid the floors, so now I don't need to have that in the background. Right now, it's just a tile. This image I made, this tile. I don't know if I can find it. It's probably disappearing. So you can look at stuff like the butterfly. You need different animation frames. I haven't done much animation yet, and there will be minimal animation, but there'll be like animation for a simple walk cycle for the characters, a simple work animation, depending what they're doing. So there'll probably be a tool. I kind of want to be funny and have them like whack whatever they're working on, except the cow. But if it's like just doing it in a silly way, there's a lot of things about this game that are like lighthearted and silly. This is a future aspect that I can't wait to implement. Is you're gonna have a computer, and I don't know if it might have cameras, kind of like Five Nights at Freddy's. I've considered that and having everything in black and white when you're looking at the cameras. In the current design, I might not have that, but I do definitely one way want to have a computer, either the cash register or something, and then you get this one of the days. So there's hazards. One of the hazards is like this mouse person that's in the dumpster, and if you don't feed them enough garbage, they'll come into your kitchen, and then they'll just start eating your ingredients. So you need to keep them fed, keep the homeless person appeased. And these hazards will add in day by day. So each of the days have kind of a different texture of how many employees you have, which I think you'll have 5 to 10 employees. Start at 5 and then each day go up. Or, yeah, maybe you start at 3 then. But the first days are really slow. It starts on a Monday, and you don't have much business, but it's just kind of like the tutorial, essentially. It's slow enough where you can figure out the game mechanics. Then you'll have a top score for each of those days. So yeah, anyways, one of the hazards is going to be, they're either called Ikamon or Ikabo. I was going to give her a little bow. And it's going to be the squid malware. It's going to be, it has an avatar, but it's just malware on the computer that asks to be petted all the time. And if you don't pet it, they get really sad and they start draining ink or bleeding ink or crying ink, essentially. And then that ink would spread around the restaurant and like steal your money or something like that. So I don't know why. I think it's really funny to have this like really needy squid that always wants pets, and then you're actually petting it on your little virtual computer in the game, and then it gets excited. It's hilarious to me for some reason. So I can't wait to implement that character. Some of the stuff with the tickets. Try some different designs. And a lot of this restaurant stuff I've experienced firsthand, and even that experience of the panic and the trying to juggle everything at the same time, that is like a fun experience. Like I watched that show Kitchen Nightmares to get that experience, or there's some VR chat room that has this kind of idea where you're a team in a kitchen and you're trying to scramble out stuff in time. So here we can also look at the code a little bit. So right now I'm at like 2,000 lines or 3,000 lines. Yeah, I'm like 2,600 lines of code, which is, I remember when it was just like, I was like, oh, it's 800 lines. Oh, it's 1,000 lines. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger so fast. I mean, you do end up copying, pasting stuff a lot. So, but it's just, you kind of want the simplest program as possible because that's the most efficient program. So some of this stuff is not the cleanest. Like you wouldn't produce this for a company. One of the things is like my pathfinding. I don't have an actual pathfinding. Okay, let me show you the game. So I have this debug. If you press Z, you can see the different rooms. So like this is East Kitchen, and this is the East Garden. So for my pathfinding, what I do is it detects where the player's at, and then it scans where they want to go, and then it looks through all the routes that I've manually put in. These routes, there's 55 routes right now. I have to route every option from every room to each other room, and then these are like the little connections. So normally you probably wouldn't do it like this at all, but this is kind of my rough way of, since there won't be that many rooms in total, like I'm definitely more than half already. It's just less work for me than creating a function that can actually figure it out. I can create a path. It's called pathfinding, and it's not that hard, honestly. But it's just slightly less work to manually put that out. That's a big thorn in my side because it seems very inefficient. So, how the game, here's some of the inner workings of the game. Ooh. There's just some functions that are too early up. And have everything on one page too. A lot of developers have multiple pages. But I like to be able to, I usually navigate myself by Control F and searching something. That's usually how I jump around. So I'm gonna just briefly go through how the code is organized here. So you got your global objects, a lot of the rooms and like workstations are declared globally, so you can access them from anywhere. But that's more memory. But in general, this game is not going to take that much memory. It's pretty small. It's only like 2 megabytes or something. That's not barely an issue. These are the panels for when you press shift, preload the images, and so once the images are loaded, it runs the init function. So this is the beginning stuff that you want to initialize. So stuff like the characters, introduces the characters, give them their location, then what image you want to have them at. And then we introduce the rooms, give them names, give them positions, give them the room dimensions. And these are all the routes once you make the rooms. So this whole init function is still running here. Then you introduce all the workstations, their names, and then the duties, which are like the actions. So I have it as a task. A task goes in a supply chain, which a supply chain is always two tasks. And then a supply chain, the supply chains are in an array inside of a station. And so the station is like in the game when you press shift. So milk. So like tomato's a simple one. It only has 2 tasks, which you can see if you click on the character. She's at harvest tomato. And then gather tomato. So that's just one supply chain. Some of them, like the flour or the dough, there's multiple supply chains, and you basically have it in a sequence where they check each of the workstations, and if the workstation already has the item they need, then they'll just go to that workstation and work. Otherwise, then they'll go to the referral task, is what I call it, where if they need flour, then they'll go to the previous station to try to get that. And then if they can't, then they'll just say idle. I'll change it where it says, where they'll notify, where they'll be like, hey, we're out of this thing. So some of the workstations, which takes up a lot of lines, as you can see, 500 lines or something. And some of the graphic stuff, cold clouds, the flowers, the butterfly, and then that's finished for the initialize function. So that's 500 lines just the beginning. So this is the update function. This runs 60 frames a second about. It'll vary depending on how the animation frame is called. For example, if you're out of focus, it won't call. So the game won't progress if it's out of focus. And so an update, this is running 60 times a second. So this is running really quickly. I have a different function that's called the game beat loop, and processes every half a second. And so this does stuff where they're working, while the update does stuff like while they're moving, or something that needs to be checked very often. So there's a lot of controls that are updated here. So all this code is just when you're selecting stuff. So there's all this stuff just about selecting things. So it checks the workstations, checks the characters, checks all the stuff that you can click on, and determines what you should have clicked on. And even if you click outside, it deselects. So it'll check everything. It'll prioritize a character over a workstation. Some old code I should just delete. Some of the controls needs to be checked in the update function. So I have a own like object that contains all the controls. Oh yeah, I didn't mention about map path. So this game is mainly inspired. I wanted to make like a fan game for GT Live. And so they're the game theorists. They also have film theory and food theory, but they're an amazing team that I'm a big fan of, and they always play small indie games, and especially games that are made about them. So I was kind of hoping that they play my game that I made for them, kind of for them, because it has their names, like your Matt Pat, and these are people in their team: Jason, Chris, and Stephanie. Stephanie is his wife. And then in the game, there's gonna be a lot of references to games they've played, which they played a lot of indie games, which I enjoy. So I'm gonna reference like Doki Doki Literature Club, a tiny bit of Bendy and the Ink Machine, FNAF, any indie game that fits, that's still like reinvented inside this game. I'm not gonna like directly steal anything. Like I also want to reference some YouTubers, some of the customers. I want to reference YouTubers. So yeah, this is hopes that he'll play the game and maybe I'll get some exposure from him playing it. And it'll be a game that I actually kind of finish to completion, because the scope of the game isn't that big, or it's big enough where I can finish it in a limited amount of time. So here's some of the collision stuff. This is checks if your player is intersecting with a wall. So the walls, if you press Z, and it's kind of like a debug menu. There's little red boxes. These are the pre-made walls I've made, so if there's a collision, then it won't let you go further into that box. It's a very simple collision detection, like as most archaic as you can make it. A lot of times you'll use somebody else's physics engine, which I've done a lot. I've used Box2D and P2.js. P2.js is an incredible physics engine. Those of you who want to do more complex stuff, those are a lot more efficient and are just really well made. But if you're doing something extremely simple, it can be just better just to make your own physics engine, because you're basically just checking squares. That's what physics detection is. So you check if they're going to run into something, if those squares are going to intersect, and if they're gonna, then you don't move them. So you check it before you move them is kind of idea behind that. So this is just to determine which room they're in right now. Oh, and to move the characters to where they want to go. So here's some helper functions. Determine room. So process game beat. This is the one that does every half second. So this will increase the time, and this will do stuff with the tasks. So they basically work every half second, takes a beat of their work. So you can, there's a little icon, there's this number down here and the icon underneath them. It shows how much work each task will take. So like wheat takes 4 beats, and each beat is a half second. So I have them on pretty low amounts right now, because I realized it just seemed to be, I was just the timing, the feeling of it. So that may be adjusted, balanced. Right now it's pretty fast, because I feel like just the pacing, how many people you have. If you had more people, I might increase it more. Balance that out better. So yeah, there's some logic. It's kind of ghetto, honestly. the going through the workstations and stuff. I've remade it once, and even after remaking it, it's a little, it's not as perfect as I may want it to be, but it's good enough where it's going to work. So right now it can work well enough to do what I need it to do. I may need to adjust it for some of the things later, like getting the tickets, the customer orders, some of the very custom things. I might just also write custom functions for those custom workstations. So find route is this is how they yeah, this just goes through the routes, all the routes, and if it has a route for them, then it makes them create waypoints between those rooms. So the waypoints are these little red boxes. Old make route. This was an older one where I tried to make my own pathfinding, like how you're supposed to do it, but it's difficult. It's hard. usually pathfinding is you're checking every single square from between. First you check the destination, and once you find like every route that's possible, so you're doing this every frame that you're pathfinding. You go through every route possible, and then you measure them, and whatever's the shortest route, you choose that route. That's basically the gist of pathfinding. It's amazing what we make our computers do. And even the old games, how they can have complex stuff run. Pretty amazing with such lower processors. That's why they had to be really limited. And actually through limitation, you can see some of the ingenious inventions that were created in the old days. Are there any good mainstream games past year 2000? I can't generally think of any. Not mainstream games. Truly indie games are inventing and creating good stuff past the year 2000 about. And I am one speck of the great designers. Find task is depending on. This is where you see if you need to take the referral task or the main task based upon what's available on the workstations. Ticket rack renders a huge function. Renders all the objects, which is more rendering stuff. And then these are individual objects, like the butterfly. Every single object that's unique needs its own function to describe it. Controls, checks the keys, and then and that's all my 2,500 lines. See, I'm excited to keep working on this. I'm pretty inspired lately, and I hope I can get it to a place where I can invite MatPat to check it out. And if you want to check it out, I'll always update the latest version on itch.io, so you can always check out where the progress is. And hopefully by the end of it, it'll be a pretty fun game that can stand on its own as well as being a good fan game. So thanks for coming along with the journey, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. See you later!